has development overtaken our ways of teaching and education? And I think to a certain extent it did happen. This is Professor Snape, and I'll tell a little bit more about the pitfalls when you think that this little machine knows all. If I show you that picture, not many of you will know what that is. It's in fact a 38 Ford. And my grandfather arrived home in 1956 with one of these cars. We still don't know where he learned to drive and how he got hold of this car. But he arrived home with it, and there it was. So it changed our way of life, because we walked where we had to go, we traveled by train, and of course we had, most of the time we had bicycles. Time has changed. In 1957, my mother ordered this little car by mail. The local garage owner said, there's an advertisement, and my mother was a widow. She worked 6 days a week, and rain and snow and whatever. And then he said, maybe you would like to buy this. This is a Fulda-mobile. It's a one-cylinder Sachs engine, and it had 4 gears when you go forward and 4 gears when you go back. How does that happen? Well, you had to switch off, push in the key, turn it again, then the engine ran that way. So things have changed so much. This is an East German invention, and incidentally, if you go onto the web, you'll still see them today. But let me get back to the question of the technology that we use. I knew very little about Professor Snape, so I typed in Snape, and guess who comes up? Harry Potter's Professor Snape. And I looked at this because I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I've never read a Harry Potter book. And I looked at, wow, how's this possible? And stuck somewhere in there was this picture of Professor Snape. But I learned a lot about another Professor Snape. And that brought me onto the idea where I said, you know, to be a teacher in today's world, you need to be a magician. And it's not easy to be a teacher today. You've got to be a magician. Pull all sorts of rabbits out of the hats to keep the attention of the learner or the student, and to make sure that they listen and not play with this thing all the time. Anyway, some more symbols. We live in a world of symbols and brands. If you see that tick, everybody goes Nike or something like that. Now that's communication, and without words you can bring a specific. Now nowadays many of the cars look similar. I battled to. In the old days you knew it was a Ford or a Chevrolet or a Dodge, but nowadays you've got to look at the badge or the name on the car, because they almost all look the same. But once more, it's communication, and it's communication without words. Most of us will know, if you see the 3-pointed star, that means Mercedes-Benz. So once more, let's make use of some of that. Then you've got the sort of funny things that grab the attention, and I've used a lot of this in lectures, because lecturing documentation can be very boring, and specifications it's very boring to lecture that. So I would bring in things like this, and suddenly they wake up and wait for the next one, and you get the attention back as well. And then these are quite nice to use. This is a series of cartoons that we've used in capacity building for young people. Wireless communication started out on the left. That's wireless communication some time ago. And then, of course, air travel started with something like that. And then the world without engineers, that's the way of the past. And then we came a little bit further. And today we have the dolos. And if you don't know what a dolos is, and if you haven't played with a dolos, which is the knuckle bones of the sheep, people don't know what a dolos is today, so you've got to explain. And now coming back again to the learning in the technical part of, so if you see that, you would think it's a rondom tali, we call it in Afrikaans. What do you call it in English? What? A merry-go-round. Oh, I thought that was the one the horses going around. But never mind. You see the misunderstandings. Anyway, you see that and you wonder what, oh, this is a lovely, lovely play park at a school, but that's in fact a water park. And there's a number of them over the country at schools. Overseas, I always had to tell people, don't think it's child labor, please, they play. But if they play, they pump. So, once more, things you can introduce into your lecturing of difficult concepts to make people aware and understand a little bit better. And of course, today when you show that picture, wow, everybody knows what that is, eh? Just shows, oh, what is it? Well, where have you been in 2010? Then I picked this up in Holland. My wife is Dutch, or she's from Dutch origin, so we've been going there from time to time to visit family, and they have a way to communicate, and boy, can they make jokes. And Jansie will most probably know, I think she was there for a while. It's amazing how these people can communicate. And I can tell you lots of jokes, but I don't have the time. But as an engineer, this fascinated me. When you get to a road construction, then you start saying, oh, hier's die tou weer. And it's going to take me longer to get to work, etc., etc., etc. And then on a certain freeway in Holland, it's about 7 or 8 kilometers, they use a very clever way to communicate a couple of words, but with pictures, and they start off with a very angry face, and it says, construction for 8 kilometers. And then every kilometer, this face changes somewhat. Now this one says, nog 4 kilometer. There's still 4 kilometers ahead. But by now, I forgot I was in a hurry. I'm just waiting to see what the next picture would be. So without a lot of words, it was communicated very well. And then there's another one. Nog 2 kilometer. And that guy is now getting very happy. And the last one says, only 1 kilometer left. And this little person also jumping up and down. You know, it's interesting how we communicate, and I just feel these are wonderful examples of the multi senses, the seeing, the reading, and how it changes your attitude towards what you're busy with as well. Yesterday I heard the problem with turning point. Now this slide I had somewhere. Now if you talk engineering, we talk footprint. It's not the footprints in the sand. But if we talk engineering, footprints mean how much land do you actually cover. Now how do you illustrate that? And this is about transportation. We would like to reduce our footprint for transportation, or for everything. But if you have a train, you only need about 10 to 35 meters of footprint. But if you have cars, etc., you need 60 to 85. But that's the concept. How do you actually explain it to your learner or to your student? That's one way to do it. So I strongly believe in using these sort of things when you teach or lecture. Our institution is one of the, or rather our profession is one of a family of what we call built environment professions. Architects, engineers, land surveyors, and you go on and on. And in about 94, my brother was an architect, my late brother, and I said to him, I need, when we go to young people, how do we explain the built environment to them? And I said, he was very good at drawing. I said, can you please make me a drawing? And it's not clear on the screen, unfortunately, that involves all of them. All these professions. And he said, it's impossible. I said, no, you must be able to do it. I gave him the list. He came up with this diagram, if you like, And you can find, in fact, all those professions in there. And then with a little description, marked with numbers. Incidentally, this cartoon, as we call it, the SAICI cartoon, has even found its way to Australia, where they're using it. And in ProSet, we've been battling, we want to expand this to the sciences as well. Now we've been battling, Jansie. Tomorrow we'll sit again with that story, because we say, how do you explain almost visually what are the professions? So this has gone a long way. And we used it, I used it even with children as small as 3-4 years old. And we've used it with government ministers as well. So it speaks to one in a certain way. So please, my colleagues around here, the sciences, think of us when we battle to get this expanded and animated, etc., etc., etc. But another way to communicate without too many words. I had, as I said, to lecture documentation and stuff like that can be very boring and sometimes very difficult. So up here in Joburg, the class I had was, it's final year technicians, technologists, by the way. I had to explain the concept of specification. And I just failed. They would look at you like so. Then one day I thought, okay, let's change gear. I said, you go into groups and you come up with a specification for a curry vetkoek. And then you come up with a specification, a method specification for a curry vetkoek. Now I still remember one of the guys getting up, a tall guy, and he sort of got up, and I'm rather short, so looked down on me and said, "Sir, what has a curry vetkoek to do with civil engineering?" And I said, "Well, okay, but I'm not going to tell you now, but you go away and you come back." And then I had them present. Now, a specification just means what's the ingredients, and the method specification, how do you actually cook it. Now today, it's interesting. There's a specification here on the back, what's in here, and there's also a method specification. Now after that exercise, that guy stood up again and he said, "Sir, I will never ever forget what a specification is." So, but I was desperate, you can think. I'm an engineer now, how do I get this over to them? Then going from there was one easy step. You say, okay, now you pick up a tin of paint. You want to design and sell paint. And what's in the paint? It's on there, more or less, unless it's a secret. And then there's a method specification. Take a clean brush, sand off this, do that, do that. So sometimes I think we need to bring those things into our classrooms to assist. Then I got to Cape Town, and that was another kettle of fish. I once more battled with this. Now I had 3 dominant languages. Up here it was mostly black learners or black students, but then I had a bigger mix in the room. And I thought one day about the specification. I said, battled again. I said, it's Valentine's Day. Now most people know what Valentine's Day is. And I said, went to the whiteboard and I drew a lovely red rose, long-stemmed rose without thorns, etc., etc. And I said, now you go and write me a 5-line specification for this rose you want to give to your loved one. Boy, oh boy, I didn't know, it was the wrong example. Some came back and they oh, I said, and by the way, you need the specification to go to the florist to order it. Because you come there and you say, I need a flower for my girlfriend, or my boyfriend, by the way. And she says, what? Then you've got to start thinking, you've got to specify what you need. Anyway, I did this and then came back the most amazing stuff. Some red roses, bunches of carnations specified, rose bushes specified, and I realized I got through to them, but not totally, because maybe my learners or the students didn't know what a long-stemmed rose, even if I drew it, they didn't fully understand. So you can land into some trouble as well.